your favorite color, right?
Yes.
Oh my god. It said it's black, so it disappeared.
Mm-hmm. All right.
What's the podcast? Let's go. You lit. You lit.
Assalamu alaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. How is everybody's day going? Alhamdulillah, my day is going well. But today I actually wanted to discuss a common topic that a lot of people um, talk about and discuss. And one of those things are narcissists. A lot of people, I think, are having some confusion about narcissists and different personality disorders. So, one of the things that I want to say first is please do not use anything that I say to be able to diagnose someone that you know or diagnose yourself or any of those things like that. So, with someone who have a personality disorder, this is something that is long standing. So, they start to demonstrate these behaviors usually around in adolescent years, and then they start to continue to display these behaviors into adulthood. Now, so one of the things that people get confused about with narcissists is that we all have narcissistic traits. We all have that because narcissism is basically like you're self-centered, you're about yourself, and who is not about themselves? Some point in time, who put themselves before other people or any of those kinds of things. So we all have some narcissistic tendencies, and sometimes we all do some gaslighting, and we all do some, bad behaviors, basically. But what I want to tell you, the difference between someone who has the personality disorder is they lack empathy. They can't empathize with people, and when they do empathize with people, it's not emotional. We call it a cognitive empathy. So with cognitive empathy, it's when you express out of your mouth empathetic words, but deep down in your heart, it is not true. That's why Allah Subhanahu wa Taala talks about you know the mushrikeen and stuff like that. But what they say out of their mouth, but sometimes within their heart is way worse. That's how a narcissist is. What's in their heart is way worse, and what it comes out and shines through as behaviors. So I always tell people that you always have to pay attention to the behaviors that people are displaying because they will tell you who they are. You just have to believe it. And a lot of times we don't do that. We don't believe the behaviors that people are telling us. So, for an example, let's just say that you have a person, you're in a relationship with, you're married to this man or this woman, and you know that internally you're experiencing a lot of conflicting feelings about the person, but everybody believes and talk about how great of a person they are. Usually it's because they, you know again, sometimes people just have narcissistic character traits and they're not necessarily a narcissist, but sometimes people are a narcissist. And the best, like again I said, the best indicator is when they lack empathy. So they can't understand where you're coming from. They don't understand why you're sad. They don't understand why you're crying. They tell you to suck it up. Which people, they'll use anything to gaslight you and what you feel about what's going on and what's happening to them. And one of the things, a narcissistic injury, I'm telling you, narcissists cannot stand being embarrassed. I mean, granted, we all don't. No one likes to be embarrassed, but with someone who's a narcissist, they will literally abandon you out of embarrassment. They will cut all communication ties. They will do anything to separate themselves from you. But then what they'll do is they'll tell family and friends of how horrible you are as a person and that you did these things to them and that you accuse them of these things, even though it's not real. And narcissists have a good way of twisting any kind of anything that you give them. They can twist it and make it as if it's your fault. So when you move on, so a lot of times what happens is trauma binding starts to happen. So basically, because whenever you experience abuse, but it's followed up with good behavior, and you get that dopamine rush, basically it has you stuck in relationships longer. So that's why people should give people grace when they notice one of their friends are in a relationship where it's not healthy, it's not good. It's because that trauma binding is really, really hard to untangle when you get into a relationship because of the dopamine reuptake and the pleasure feeling that feels good inside your brain to be able to, basically it's like you borderline like an addiction to the person that you're in a relationship with. So then you have narcissists. Then you have someone who has borderline personality disorder. And that's a little bit different in the sense that they are so afraid of abandonment. So because of their fear of abandonment, they will do anything to hold on to a relationship. So that's when you start seeing all the erratic behaviors that they may be having because they perceive that you are going to abandon them. And one thing that's interesting about borderlines is that they have a habit of saying, like, how they will behave, but never are in the position to be able to behave that way. So, for example, like, say you have a friend that's borderline, y'all used to go out and hang out every weekend, and then they lose their job. Then they say, well, when I was working, you were always hanging out with me, and it's like, yeah, because we were always going out, but you had your own money. They're like, but you can pay for me, and it's like, they're like, that's what I would do for you. Well, how can you do that when you can't? Because a lot of times borderlines can't hold a job, they can't keep friendships and relationships. No, so no, they could not keep those things. They could not do those things. So I just find it interesting whenever I have people who have borderline personality disorder because they really do not perceive their own mess, basically. Um, so we have to be mindful of, you know, everybody. So some things can seem like somebody that's borderline, and it might just be anxiety. It might just be depression. So like being mindful that there are other kinds of diagnoses that still may present like personality disorders. So whenever you are dealing with somebody, you have to pay attention to your internal stuff that's going on with you and validate yourself and make the decision that if you want to keep the relationships or that you want to move on, however it is that you would like to do it. And just remember that I tell people all the time, like, we teach people how to treat us. So whenever you stay in relationships that are abusive, emotionally abusive, mentally abusive, spiritually abusive, it gets harder and harder. The longer you stay in that kind of relationship, the harder it gets. And even like gaslighting, which I talk a lot about different kinds of abuse. Um, One of the main things that I feel like us as Muslims we need to start talking about more is spiritual abuse. People have been using Dean to gaslight and abuse people with with the religion, and they holding people accountable into a standard that is not true. So, like for example, they'll a brother will tell you that they're the leader, they're the Quam, and you're supposed to follow them. They're the head of the household, and they're supposed to provide and protect you. But then they'll turn right around and say, "Can I borrow money from you? I can't pay the bills. I'm going to move in with you. I have no money. I have no job, but you're supposed to follow me." And that's abusive because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala also said that you are the maintainers of women. So it's hand in hand, and we talk about each other's rights, but we don't give each other our rights. And spiritual abuse is the most insidious kind of abuse that you can ever do to a person because you don't realize that it's abuse because it's true. So they'll take something true and they weaponize it. So basically, and I don't know if anybody is familiar with this, but Shaitan says that all the believers, he's going to attack them from the front, from the back, from the right, and from the left. So when he's talking, so when you do spiritual abuse, basically what Shaitan is doing is using you, is he's attacking you from the right side, where he's taking knowledge and deen and twisting it in your mind to make it seem like you're doing the right thing. I mean, some people may be aware of that they're using religion to gaslight you and abuse you, but some people may not be aware of that. So again, still giving people grace and the an ability to change if these things are brought up to them. So again, we have to be mindful of the different kinds of abuse that happens. We have to be mindful of, the emotional abuse, the mental abuse, the spiritual abuse, financial abuse. Because again, sometimes, even like with women, we'll use our money to try to keep a man because we pay for everything for him and buy him this and buy him that. When it's abusive in a sense that men are not designed men are designed to take care of their families, and they feel good about taking care of their families. So when you're taking away something that allows a man to develop a sense of pride about being able to care and take and provide for his family. So just being mindful, just like even in the reverse, men who be like, oh, become a housewife so that they can abuse you so you can't go anywhere. It happens all the time. I see it a lot. But I want to get back to narcissism. Now, narcissism is usually diagnosed with men. However, with women, a woman who is narcissistic is more dangerous and harder to spot than men are. And it's because in society we teach women cognitive empathy. So they're able to say all the good words that they need to say so that you can believe that they have empathy and things like that, but they really don't. I don't know if you ever seen a person who they might start crying to get you on their side, and then as soon as you seem like that you're on their side, like the tears just stop, and they just like, yeah, because though, and it's because it was never real, it was never genuine. But we, as people, we like to overlook other people. Sometimes, not all the time, but sometimes we overlook the signs of and symptoms of someone being a narcissist because there's someone that is close to us, there's someone that we love, or we'll call it tough love. Oh, I'm just giving you tough love, when in reality, what I'm giving you is abuse. Now, it's sad to say that some people don't know that it's abuse. Some people have to be taught that it's abuse. Because I think, in the African American community with us, we have not been taught that, these are some of the things of how we should be treated as human beings. So when we get into narcissistic relationships or people with personality disorders, where it's hard to deal with them and be with them in a romantic relationship, we always feel like we got to stick it out. We got to stick it out. We got to stick it out. I can't let this tear up my family. But if we become more proactive and stop, not completely, but we love to be like, oh, red flags this, red flags that. You know everything of to look out for, but yet you're still getting in the same kind of relationship. It's because you're not looking for the green flags also. There's red flags and then there's green flags. And some of the green flags is like accountability. When a person is wrong, or do they have the ability to take ownership? Spirituality. Are they praying? Do they seek, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's knowledge? Do they look in the hadith about what the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam did, said, or silently approved of? Are we doing those things? I mean, are they doing those things? And that's for both men and women. So, do they have friends? How long are they friendships? Do they last? How is his relationship with his mom? How is her relationship with her dad, and her family, and her friends? These are the things that are important to look for, because I guarantee you, however they treat the people in their life that they love, they will treat you like that too. And I think that sometimes people, we always think that we can change somebody. Then don't get me wrong, people can change with us, but then they don't change because of us. They change because that's what they want to do. They want to change. So, even like in the Bible where it says, God helps those who help themselves. It's not because he's trying to leave people stranded. It's just that that's just like if you see a person sitting on the steps and they ask you for help to get up and they reach their hand out to you and then you reach your hand out to them and you start to pull. But what if they started pulling back? Wouldn't you let go? So a lot of times it's that whole dynamic of we got to learn to let go when you realize that the person doesn't want to go. They don't want to go to the next level. They don't want to be greater. They don't want to do anything. They're in their comfort zone. And just like in our dean, fornicators are for the fornicators and adulterers are for the adulterers. It's a reason for that saying. I mean, it's not saying, but it's a reason that it's in our dean that you pair up with people who are like you. It's less friction in a relationship when you find someone who likes you, whose communication skills is just like yours, who, you know, um, understands that accountability is important, who understands that mental health is important, spiritual health is important, and looking to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and his messenger for these kinds of guidance on how they should interact with people and how they should give each other their rights. So whenever you're out there and you see people, I can't tell people, pay attention to behaviors. They will never lie to you. They will never lie to you. And I'm going to give you an example. I had a session with someone where they talked about how, they were talking on the phone with a brother and they were not married. And the mom found out and started yelling at her about this is haram. You shouldn't be talking to my son on the phone. You need to fix this. And so she's blaming the girl for them two being on the phone. And so I asked, and then she said, then the guy started cussing her out because now his mom is mad at them. So I asked her, what does that show you? He doesn't know how to take accountability because it takes two hands to clap. I mean, when I called you on the phone, you answer, or vice versa. So it's a lack of accountability. But also, look at mom's behavior. Mom is blaming you also, which means she never taught her son how to have accountability for his behaviors. Now, someone who doesn't know how to be accountable can seem like someone who's a narcissist, but they're not. They just never was taught accountability. So that's why I said the biggest difference between narcissism, having a personality disorder, is empathy. That's what really separates the two. Because people can have a lot of borderline tendencies, paranoid tendencies, and schizoid tendencies, and all these kinds of different tendencies, but it doesn't necessarily mean that they are. So, being mindful of that. So, what I also wanted to say is that that's a key indicator that you want to look for. Can they relate to you? And I'm not talking about sympathy either. Sympathy is so much different than empathy. Empathy is being able to put yourself in another person's shoes and feel the pain that they may go through, and it's reflected in their body, in their language. So it's just, you just got to be mindful of that and just be really careful about that. So I just wanted to know if anybody have any comments. You can put, anybody have any comments, if they have any questions about what to look for, situations, you can ask and I will give you my advice. It won't be clinical, so I want you to understand that this is not clinical advice that I may give you, because I don't know the whole story about what's going on. But what I can say is I will do my best to answer any questions that you may have about any past relationships that you may have had with people that appear to exude these kinds of behaviors in the relationships. But again, like I want to say is most people that even though that they have narcissistic tendencies doesn't necessarily mean that they have doesn't mean that they have narcissistic personality disorder. I kind of drew a blank there, sorry. Um, but yeah, so being mindful that people who struggle, because let me say this before you know, one of the things that I also teach people, yes, traits. One of the things that I teach people also is that um, you have to you really have to be on guard and you have to be on alert when you're looking at these behaviors that someone is distributing. So, since they're asking about gaslighting. So what gaslighting will look like will be something like, let's just say, um, let me get an example. So for I'm gonna tell you about narcissistic abuse, and I'm kind of gonna tie it all in. Like one time I was married to someone, and the and they someone in the house wrote that um, uh, cleanliness is close to godliness. They try to use scriptures because basically what it was doing was it was a narcissistic attack on me to be like, because they wanted me to wash the dishes instead of saying, hey, can you wash the dishes? They used some religion to be able to justify why I should. It's control. It's about power and control. So I washed the dishes. I did it, and I washed it off and everything. But what gaslighting do also is that they will use, especially emotional gaslighting, they will use feelings, or they'll twist words, or lying by omission, or they will. I'm trying to really explain it. So, like, say you're having a conversation with someone and you're talking about them cheating, right? You're like, you cheated on me. And then they be like, well, and they start bringing up all this old stuff that's irrelevant. It has nothing to do with it, because what they're trying to do is let you become emotional and make you feel bad, and it gets them out of it. Or they'll be like, you shouldn't be snooping. You shouldn't have been going through my things. That's not the sunnah of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and they'll use stuff to gaslight you into being like, you know what, you're right. I shouldn't have been snooping. I shouldn't have went through your phone, which you shouldn't have. That is true. But it's to get the heat off of them. So whatever it is, it's, if you ever notice that, if you ever in a conversation with someone where you're trying to hold them accountable, and next thing you know, you realize that you're holding yourself accountable for something, that's a problem. And so I teach people that when you are and listen, when it comes to gaslighting, no one is exempt. I don't care if you're a narcissist, regular, or whoever. We all have the tendencies to do that because sometimes we can't see outside of our own box. But when you're having a conversation about holding somebody accountable, and say they bring something else up that's valid, you can say, hey, I understand you're concerned about me going through your phone. We're going to just use that, me going through your phone. However, right now, we're going to talk about your cheating. And once we finish with talking about your cheating, we can talk about me going through your phone. And that's how you learn to not go against the grain, and then start to try to defend yourself about things that's happening. So you, when you're having a conversation, you're confronting someone about it, you stick to that topic. You don't deviate. You don't go anywhere else. And then you say, hey, we're going to address that concern later. And if they start spilling a whole lot of concerns, maybe even get a notebook. Okay, I hear that you have a lot of concerns. So let's write them all down. And when we're finished, we're going to go back to you cheating. So always make sure you're staying on topic when it comes to gaslighting, because you can easily get lost, because it's relying on you to become emotional and for you to get upset. And then once you get upset, the front of your brain, the executive functions, the part of your brain that allows you to make decisions, it goes offline. So your ability to think rationally and stuff like that goes out the window. So just um, staying on topic whenever it is that you're confronting someone about something. So, how do you heal from past relationships, whether it's friendship or intimate relationships with a spouse? Um, you go through the grieving process. So, a lot of times we get stuck in the grieving process because, and usually, especially when it comes to, the different kinds of relationships, because we're grieving what we thought we should have had, but we're also grieving the loss of the person, and we haven't even gotten to the stage of acceptance. And so the first part of grieving is you got to accept the loss. You got to feel the loss. You have to and feel all the emotions that comes with the loss. You're going to go from sadness. You're going to sometimes be happy. Sometimes you're going to be angry. There's going to be different stages that you may go through when you're going through a loss. Just like if you lost your mother or you lost your father or like if they died, um, it's the same kind. It's a loss from out of your life. So I think that it's important that you think about that, you process that. You know, even if that means talking to another friend, like, oh, this hurts that, I no longer have this person, but you got to find someone that you can confide in and talk to them about the loss that you're experiencing and go through the grieving process, making du'as, because there's du'as that you can say that the Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam said, for different kinds of emotions to help you navigate and get through them. But talk, and then they're not going to always be the same. Some days you might be absolutely happy that the person is out of your life, and you be jumping for joy, and then the next thing you know, you're just so sad. So just keep striving, keep trying, and inshallah, it definitely gets better. It gets better. I don't like saying that it gets better over time because it doesn't necessarily get. I don't feel like it necessarily heals over time. I feel like we learn to deal with it and we learn to navigate the feelings whenever it is that they come, and we start to basically desensitize ourselves to the feelings that we have had about a person, but we don't technically. Healing is a lifelong process. It's not an event. I realized my ex was one after reading an article. The advice given was when they are in their midst of being them and attacking you, call them by name. When I did that, you could see it caught him off guard and he lost power at that moment. I refused to slide back into it. Um, that's interesting. I wonder what was um, the rationale for why, if you call them by their name when they're attacking you, that they lose their power. Because usually, if a narcissist had power over someone, just calling them by name may not be enough. Um, so gaslighting is when they want to change your reality. You see a red shirt and they say, "No, your eyes ain't working right. That shirt is orange." Or if you see him cheating, he would tell you that you are crazy and your mind is playing tricks on you. That's projecting and deflecting all at once. Absolutely, but you know what? I would make it even better because what they'll do is they'll say, you'll see a red shirt, but they usually don't go all the way out, but they'll say stuff like, "No, it's like a burnt orange." So then you looking at it and it's like, well, maybe it could be, and it's always, and they try to leave you in that limbo of the couldas. It could be this way. It could be that way. I can see your point of view. Um, and sometimes they'll just flat out lie and twist everything until you start believing it. But a lot of times, what they start with is the subtle lies that have you questioning your reality. Because once they start questioning, once you start, that's the worst thing you can start doing is questioning your reality when you are in a relationship with someone who is narcissistic. Because once you start doing that, they got you. Because then they will make you question every single day, every single day. Oh, alhamdulillah, I'm glad that, because I think that it's important, for people out here to be educated about, some of the things that are going on with people when it comes to life coaching. um, and and understanding those things. And I'm glad that you are a life coach. And I want to kind of actually, since you're brought it up, I want people to also understand the differences between a life coach and someone who's a therapist. So as me as a therapist, I can diagnose and treat mental disorders. So like I can treat depression, I can treat um, narcissistic personality disorder. I can treat everything that's in the DSM-5 that they consider medical diagnosis. Someone like a coach, they help you navigate your life. So they don't necessarily, now granted, the stuff that they have you do that navigates your life, it may impact your mental health. That's great. I'm all for it because some people don't. They don't be needing therapy. They do need a life coach. And I think sometimes people always be feeling like, oh, I'm this. I need a therapist, and they be like, no, your problems are not that deep. Your problems are not solely mental health. Your problems are your business that's causing you anxiety. And that life coach, people who specialize in life coaching to get your business off the ground and do the necessary hard work, you should go to them, because that's what they specialize in. Or even like relationships, how to improve your relationships with other people. Life coaches can do that. So that's like the difference. So basically, if you want to get treated for mental health problems, you can go. And if you don't, and you just have like regular life problems that everybody had, then you can go to a regular coach. So I think that, getting assessed by a coach or by a therapist to see what you need would be probably the most beneficial. Um, yeah. My next question is, how does process of therapy work? Because I went to therapy when I was 17 years old and I felt like it did not work, and I want to give it a try again, but I don't know how to make it work for me. Um, I think that the process of therapy. So I always tell people, try different therapists. It is okay to try different people because everybody is not going to be able to help you. I always tell people honestly, and this is the truth, is I say 95% of therapists are trash, 3% are mediocre, and there's only like 2% that are amazing. Um, and the differences in the different kinds of therapists that I have encountered is learning how to adjust their therapeutic style to different people. So I've had, therapists where I'll tell them, like, listen, I understand you're a therapist and I know I'm in therapy, but please, 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 can you just make it like a conversation? I said, because when you make it all technical and therapy, I said, it really gets on my nerves and it's irritating. I don't like that. So can you please, like, just have a conversation with me? She kept doing it. So I said, you know what? I need a new therapist. I had another therapist. I felt like he wasn't holding me accountable enough. I said, this ain't going to work. You're not holding me accountable enough, because some of the stuff that I said, I know is crazy. Like, why would you co-sign that? So you have to go with someone that you feel comfortable with, but also be a little bit uncomfortable. Because as a therapist, it's my job to challenge your thought process. So sometimes it's going to get really, really uncomfortable inside of the session. And that's okay. That's normal. That's how it's going to be. And then if you feel like somebody missed the mark when you are talking to them, you tell them, hey, no, that's not true for me. This is what it is. And they should be helping you really look and examine your life. So a lot of times, some therapists, they get caught up in the story that someone is telling them, and the story is not important. What's really important is, how did you think and how did you behave within the story. So they should start asking you questions. Well, why did you do that? How come you didn't try something different? Where are some other things that you can do? When was the first time, like, say for example, somebody's talking about being disrespected, because that's a famous thing for Black people. I feel disrespected, right? And then a follow up, like, I feel like my cousin or husband or wife was disrespecting me. Like, oh, it seems like respect is very, very important to you. Can you tell me about a time that the first time you ever felt disrespected? Because then you probably start talking about, well, one time in Ben camp, when I was in 8th grade, I felt like, such was disrespecting me. This person was disrespecting me. So whenever you are in a therapy session, if you don't feel like that person is challenging you, then you should absolutely move on to a new therapist. And that's okay. Every therapist is not going to fit you, going to suit you. That's why I so many different kinds of therapists. Especially, I feel like, and I hope that more Muslims will start becoming therapists, because our deen guides what we believe and what we do. And a lot of people, well, some of the therapists that's out there, they don't know our deen, and sometimes they don't understand some of the things or challenges that we go through. Bad enough as African Americans, they don't understand the challenges that we may be going through in general. So, wa alaikum salam wa barakatuh. And I just want to say that pay attention. I can't say this enough. Pay attention to behaviors. Behaviors will tell you everything that you need to know. And I'm going to leave you with this one quote that someone close to me used to always say. He said, I let people do what they want to do, so I'll know what they rather do. Because what we do as men and women, we literally tell people how to abuse us. We tell them. We say, yeah, I had an ex-husband. He used to always, we was together for 10 years, and he used to call me stupid, dumb, and cheat on me all the time. So they basically know, okay, I can emotionally disrespect her. I can cheat on her, and I can at least get 10 years out of her. Or as a man, where they say, I had a woman who, she took my kids, she did this, she did that, and I just continued to try to work it out, and she was cheating on me, just in the reverse. Now I know that that's the things that I can do, and I can get away with it. So please let people do what they want to do, so you'll know what they'd rather be doing. That's the best advice that I can give you, alhamdulillah. So before I go, do anybody have any questions about anything and any advice that I can give? Because I'm always willing to give advice. You can also go onto YouTube and subscribe to my channel, which is the number one _favorite _therapist on YouTube. I have a bunch of podcasts. You can also look me up on any type of different other podcasts outlets. You can just look at my name, Michelle Renee Davis. It will, the trauma bonding, sure, absolutely. Michelle Renee Davis, if you type that into Apple Podcasts or any other podcast, my name will come up, and you will be able to watch the previous podcast. Listen to the previous podcast that I've done. So trauma binding. So trauma now. So it's multiple different. So it's more than one different kinds of trauma binding. And one of the things is, I'm gonna tell you about the first one. So sometimes people, they bond around a traumatic event, and become good friends or have a good relationship. So to give you an example, I worked at a very toxic work environment. I mean, when I say it was toxic, it was toxic. But when I left, I missed the clients so much. Now, mind you, I worked at many different places. I had many different clients, but I didn't connect and care about them as much as I did them at that particular job site. And one day I was talking to my friend, and I was like, you know what? She's also another therapist. I said, I am trauma bonded to my clients at that particular work location because of all the abuse that we all was experienced, united us together and created a bond between me and the members. And even till this day, I still drive past that particular clinic to talk to everybody and see everybody and say hi to them because I love them so much. But it's really a trauma bond that me and the clients have formed and developed. But then there's another type of trauma bonding where the person who is abusing you inflicts on you. And what they'll do is we call it cycle of abuse. So, people who have been in domestic violence, it's the honeymoon phase. Buy you flowers, cakes, cookies, whatever, everything is going good. And then it keeps going until they start to abuse you, and then they really go in heavy, and then they'll blame you for the abuse. So then it's like, then it starts you again questioning your reality, like, you know what, I did do this, I didn't cook his dinner right, or I didn't clean the house like she wanted me to clean the house. And then it goes to the top, and then they apologize. I'm like, I'm so sorry, but you just be making me so angry. It's because I love you and I care about you and all of these things. And what happens is you become bonded. And when that happens, because when it gets to the good phases, you start to get the serotonin, the reuptake, you know, and basically you're getting high off of the good times that you have with the person that is abusing you. So that gets a little tricky when I see clients who are getting emotionally abused and gaslighted, because I have to first instill that their reality is real, that it's true, um, and that it happened. So when I am doing those kinds of sessions, I basically, anytime I get a chance to validate their reality, I do that to let them know that their reality is true, their reality is real, and what they believe is real. So that's basically how like trauma bonding works. How does one heal with the betrayal trauma due to their partner cheating and lying? Um, it Again, everything always depends on each person, because the way I might work with one person may not always necessarily be how I work with someone else. Because whenever you are betrayed, you know, it does something to your spirit in a sense, where sometimes we'll start to internalize what the person did, that they cheated on us because we're deficient in some kind of way. And it's not a deficiency. So a lot of times it starts to come around with, a lot of times I do a lot of work to help rebuild your self-esteem, rebuild your self-worth, but also tackling those problems that comes with betrayal, because then sometimes it's harder for you to trust other people um, with your emotional safety. Um, so I teach emotional boundaries so that you can learn how to separate yourself. Like, you can still love someone, but be able to have that emotional boundary. That's very, very important. Um, and putting blame where blame belongs. Because again, people, when they're betrayed and they're cheated on, a lot of times, especially women do it a lot, is they always feel like that they weren't good enough and they didn't have enough to give. And that's why they were betrayed. In reality, it's not. It's not. A lot of times it just has to do with um, the male's own insecurities within himself that he needs to fix. Because even, people use the argument, but oh, men are made for polygyny. Yes, they are, but polygyny is for women, it's not for men. And when you're getting into polygyny, it's so that every woman can have a husband and be taken care of. What you are doing is just cheating. You're not taking care of her, you're not doing anything. You're just laying up and having babies. I just added that, but you get the gist. And vice versa, when women are cheating, a lot of times is because they feel, it's always internal, it's always about you. If they feel that they don't, usually, not always, can do a blanket stare. Usually they feel like there's no emotional connection with their husband, because for women, we we like to feel emotionally connected with our husband, and sometimes what we do is, to me, this is my personal opinion, we emotionally cheat, which is way worse, because then that's you confiding and going to someone else for what you need emotionally. And to me, that's way worse than physically cheating. So somebody said, when you ignore the red flags, it's easy to blame yourself, especially if you give them a second chance. Absolutely. And but I want to add to that what I had said to people earlier, is that sometimes not only do we skip the red flags, but we need to start learning green flags, the things that you should look for in a spouse. 'Cause a lot of times you know what you don't want in a spouse, even though we, let it go over our head. But sometimes, do you know what you do want? And see, sometimes a woman will say, "Oh, I want him to be able to financially take care of me." Okay, that's great. But he can financially take care of you and be abusive. He can financially take care of you and be the cheater. And vice versa. Oh, I just want a woman that want to be a stay-at-home wife. She can be staying home, right, with another ninja while you out at work. So you have to also look for green flags and knowing what you do want in a person. And like, so for my thing, I would say my number one thing that I want in anybody is the ability to self-reflect, like Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala talks about in the Quran about self-reflection. But also too, I want them to be accountable for their behavior. I want to know that someone can look and see how they played a part in whatever issues or problems or concerns that's going on within the relationship. And that's even from friendships too, even, my girlfriends. So we need to start also looking at green flags, and I'll definitely make sure that I post it on my wall what I mean by when I say green flags, because that's important too. Knowing what you do want and knowing what you don't want is very, very important. It's very important, because some things, if you start looking for the things that you do want, sometimes they offset the negative attributes that a person may have. So like, for example, if they're an honest, person, they are not known to be a liar, they're less likely to cheat, because if they get caught, they know they ain't gonna want to tell the truth. You know, just stuff like that. It doesn't always mean that, because some people just don't care, and I'm a straight honest person, don't care about your feelings. But then again, that's when you say, I also want someone who's honest, who has empathy, who's accountable for their behavior, who has rational thought processes, who's spiritual, they're Muslim, they go to the Quran and Sunnah for everything. So just making sure that you look for those green flags is so, so, so important. Also, yes, knowing what you want, also what you don't want. The two must be known. Absolutely. People will literally not know what they want. It's like when I'm asking people, what are some of the good things that you like about yourself? They be like, so then I have to trick them and say, well, what would you like in a friend? And then they'll be like, oh, well, in a friend, I would like this. I'm like, well, aren't you all those things? Because a lot of times we project within ourselves onto other people. And I want to be clear about that, because someone actually said that about projection. When they was talking about projection, I forgot who, but projection is an amazing thing, because you know what else? People always think about projecting negative stuff onto people. Oh, they feeling negative about themselves, so they projecting their negativity on me. But you know what? Especially women, I see it more with women than with men. We will project our own positivity on our spouse. We'll say, I love him, so because I love him, I know that he loves me and he will never treat me like that or do that to me, because I wouldn't do that to him. And we'll project a lot of our own goodness onto our spouse when they don't deserve it, because they're not you. He don't deserve your goodness. So being mindful of that, of not projecting your goodness onto other people. So matter of fact, this is what women would say. I saw potential. They'll say, I saw potential in him. That was your potential. You saw you. You saw all the good things that you could do. So you should do those things. You know, I've been in relationships where I'm like, oh my God, I think this brother, he's great. He can own his own business. I'm going to help him. I got out the relationship and I'm like, I can own my own business. What? Like, I could have started my own business while I was in the relationship or anything like that. But we will project our goodness onto our spouse. And so when you start to see that you're doing that, you should absolutely take a look at them and be like, you know what? Am I saying that I should do this? Because sometimes we're afraid of our own greatness. We be afraid of our own greatness. So we push other people to be great and be happy in the shadows. So, you know, alhamdulillah, anything that I've said that is from Allah and His messengers, you know, that was good, it came from Him. And anything that was from anything that was bad or incorrect was absolutely from myself. You know, so alhamdulillah. So inshallah, I will see you guys next Monday. Assalamu alaikum rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.